Hi, welcome back to our Road to Steam series, a series in which we'll be creating a game from scratch. Previously on our HEUSS Dev Diaries, we laid out a roadmap of our plans for 2020. In today's episode, we add arrow deflects to our combat sandbox. Interested to follow the progress of our game? Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to get all the latest development updates every week. In our recent devlogs, we spent a lot of development resources on refining the visual presentation of our UI and environment. In today's episode, however, it's time to go back to our roots and refocus our attention on the combat aspect of our game. For a long time now, we've had enemies and projectiles vanish into thin air when they get struck. This made for a dull combat experience, as there is no trace of your carnage while you're fighting around the battlefield. To remedy this problem, we'll add death animations to spice things up. But before tackling anything related to character gore, we'll be implementing what happens when arrows get hit. In our fifth devlog, we created combat animations for the player character. These animations were separated into two categories: idle states and melee strikes. They were designed to visually flow into each other during gameplay to create a smooth combat experience. But to avoid reusing the same animation on every strike, we also created 3 different attack stances to shake things up. When it comes to arrows, we'll use these stances to create different ragdoll animations. Projectiles hit by slash and thrust attacks will be deflected while spinning in the air. On the other hand, arrows hit by overhead attacks will be redirected into the ground where they'll get stuck. This ragdoll animation is particularly important because we plan on using it later on in development for a specific special move. We teased it in our first devlog when we created a showreel of what we thought the game would look like in the future. This special move is meant to use arrows stuck in the ground as launching pads for the player to do some acrobatics. The way we'll go about creating these two types of ragdoll is by having a manager that acts as a choreographer. Its purpose is to animate the arrow model it houses by changing some of its properties over time. These properties are different depending on which type of animation the manager must perform. The spinning ragdoll animation requires 4 different characteristics: movement speed, gravity, rotation speed, and a color fade over time. On the other hand, the stuck in the ground ragdoll animation also requires 4 different attributes: a starting rotation, movement speed, a wiggle animation that's activated when the arrow reaches the ground, and a color fade over time. Every time an arrow is destroyed, a ragdoll manager is spawned in its place. Depending on which attack stance is used to strike the arrow, the correct ragdoll animation is chosen to be performed. If the projectile is destroyed by other means, however, the default spinning animation is played. To avoid any visual obstructions during gameplay, the Z position of the manager is changed to be on the ragdoll row. That way, animations can be performed behind all active enemies on the battlefield. With this, let's see how it all comes together in action. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll start implementing character gore into the game. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe, and we'll see you next week with a new episode of our Road to Steam series.
Some